Hello, and welcome to episode 19 of the Life and Finances Together podcast. We want to thank our audience members who have liked and subscribed and encourage you to make that click today if you haven't already. Roger and Jake spend a lot of time preparing people for retirement and have seen a lot of mistakes that pre-retirees and even retired clients struggle to overcome. Let's find out more about these mistakes and, most importantly, how to avoid them.
Today we're going to talk about 5 common retirement planning mistakes. Now, they may not be so common or maybe at the front of everybody's mind who's getting ready to retire, but these are things that Jake and I see when we're doing financial planning for clients, right? There's things that you just don't think about. So we're going to talk today about sequence of returns, right? Looking at what returns are and when they happen during your retirement years. That's a pretty big thing. And then coordinating along with that, how do you manage your cash? Where is it? How much do you need in the next 1, 2, or maybe even 3 years? Then we're going to get into some of the mistakes that relate directly to investor behavior, right? Missing those best 40 days or 10 days, out of a 20-year period of time. Looking at making bad decisions as it relates to trying to time the market, right? Maybe getting a little bit nervous and maybe not being as prepared as you should. So we're going to look at those things. And then also unrealistic expectations. What really should we be earning at a certain level of risk? Those are the things that you need to be thinking about. And most people say, well, Roger, I'm really only thinking about how much I'm going to spend on vacation this year. Well, that's okay. We want you to do that, but you're going to have to look at some of these other things. So we're going to talk about sequence of returns. And what are we talking about there? We're talking about when you experience losses from market fluctuation. And when we look at this, the key thing here is you don't want to take big hits, big drawdowns in your portfolio early on in retirement. And when you look at the chart that we've got here, we've got a comparison. On the left, we've got a comparison here where it shows we're not taking big hits at the front end of retirement. And if you look at this chart all the way through this 20-year period of time, and this is actually a period of time from 1989 through 2008, you'll see that not taking big hits at the front end and still taking your withdrawals, this example here, they didn't run out of money. There's still some money left over at the end of this 20-year period of time. Now, if you fast forward and look over to the right at the other chart, all we did here is we just flipped this 20-year period of time. We just said, hey, we're going to put the losses at the front end. And they're actually, this is reality. This is going back to actual time, going back into history. And all we did was flip it. Everything else remains the same. The withdrawal rate, the average rate of return over time, it's just a matter of when you took those losses. And into the chart to the right, you took the losses early on. And what happens? You outlive your money, right? So what do you do for that? You got to manage your cash. You really got to manage the cash very effectively. You want to know what keeps Jake and I up for retirees? Not managing the cash properly. Not making sure that we've got enough to pay your bills in certain years, right? I mean, that's what keeps us up.
Yeah.
That's what we do the majority of the time. And we're also looking at always managing risk. But remember, sequence of returns. We probably watch this thing so closely when somebody just begins their retirement because we understand the negative impact of it over the long haul. And managing that cash is absolutely critical. But there's another component that goes along with some of these mistakes, and it's very common, and that's emotions.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Roger and I can go through to create your financial plan, put together the perfect portfolio allocation for you based on your risk tolerance, your time horizon, based on short, intermediate, long-term needs, put together the perfect portfolio for what we believe you need to be invested in longer term. And then emotion gets in the way. Investor
exactly
emotion,
gets in the way, right? Exactly.
And because we understand, just like Roger just showed, we want to invest in a portfolio that's not going to take these big hits at the front end of retirement because it can dramatically impact things. So we put together this portfolio. And then, again, emotion, what we refer to in our industry as different behavioral finance things, get into the way. Different biases that you may have mentally that make you feel like if the market's performing poorly, you have to take some sort of action. And oftentimes, what does that mean? You're going to start implementing a market timing approach to managing your money, which we don't like to do. We want to invest longer term because we can see, and you'll see it here on the charts, what can happen if you try to time the market. When you're timing the market, you really have to get lucky twice.
Right.
You have to hope that you move to cash when the market's at a high, and then you move back into the market once it hits a low. So you miss out on all of that decline in the portfolio.
And I think you'd agree. If we found somebody that could do that, get it right every time on both
be on our
decisions,
payroll.
you're coming to work at Ryan Bell and David, right?
Yeah, because what actually happens is you're going to take a lot of the hit on the front end of a market downturn. You're going to be like, oh my gosh, the market is falling. I'm going to move to cash. So you've locked in that loss. And then you're going to be way too late getting back into the market because you're going to want to see a sustained recovery after these hits because you're going to be nervous, you're going to be scared. That emotional decision making, you can see how that over time impacts your return. We're looking at this chart at market returns over a 25-year period of time and the impact that missing out on just days worth of the best performance, how that can impact your average annual return. We're talking the best 10 days, your return drops from 7.7% annualized to 4.39%. So on and so forth, where if you miss the best 40 and 50 days over that 25-year period, you've got negative annualized rate of return. And when do those best days usually happen? In the initial portion of the recovery.
Yeah, it's usually the first 30 days.
Yeah, exactly.
These big swings, these big recovery days, that's when they happen. The market hits the bottom, boom.
Yeah.
And then you get these nice big recovery days.
Exactly. Yep. So that's why our belief is that when you're investing, it's about time in the market, not timing the market. And that's key. And that's where we come into the mix, where we're trying to help clients manage those emotions, manage those expectations, and create a portfolio that's allocated so that in an all-weather approach, there's going to be stuff that's not getting hit as hard when the markets are performing poorly. Right?
You're always going to be upset probably with us. You know, there's going to be something in your portfolio you're not going to like probably every single time you'd walk into the office. Yeah. And then Jake and I kind of categorize that, or we described it as an all-weather portfolio, right? We don't know when things are going to change. And you said it. We don't know when things are going to change. We don't know, how extreme swings will be. But we do know that we're planning for those things, right? So there always should be something in your portfolio to handle any type of weather.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah. And when you look at this, you could say, okay, if you don't go through all those measures and you just want to, invest your portfolio and you're going to try to time the market, we just showed you the impact of what time in the market can have on your portfolio in that 25-year period. Well, here's another chart that kind of shows you.
Yeah, this one.
When you're making investment decisions based on these behaviors, kind of based on fear and feeling like you have to make these adjustments to your portfolio, how it over time can really negatively impact your return. Over this 20-year period of time from 2001 to 2020, we look at some of the returns of the major asset classes compared to what's called the average investor. Well, Dalbar runs a study every single year where they calculate the returns of an average investor, where those returns are negatively impacted by market timing and some of these other, unfortunately poor decision making when it comes to managing the portfolio. Buying at a high, selling at a low, these types of things. Buying a stock that has already gone up 1,000% when it's way overvalued, right? Some of these, unfortunately, bad decisions when it comes to managing a portfolio can also impact your return along with market timing. So you can see over this 20-year period of time, the average annual performance of the S&P was 7.5%.
Not 10, by the way.
Yeah, not 10, exactly. And Raj will talk about that in a second, unrealistic expectations on your return. But over this 20-year period, the S&P was up 7.5% on average annually. The bond market, the aggregate bond market, which that includes some junky bonds too, right? The very high yield stuff, was up 4.8%. And then you've got your lowly average investor earning 2.9% on average annually. So this is real. There's actual math and studies, and Dalbar runs this analysis every year that shows if you're going to make emotional decisions when it comes to managing a portfolio, if you're going to buy it in opportune times, if you're going to sell it in opportune times, all these things can compound and really impact your return.
And you want to try to stick to the game plan. When you deviate from the game plan that you've put together, either with us or with your advisor, this is what happens, right? An average of 2.90% rate of return. And I bet if we asked any of you out there and said, hey, what's the key to investing? I know you would know the answer. Buy low, sell high. Well, guess what everybody does? Jake just said it. Sell low, buy high, right? Because of this emotional component. So the other thing that goes along with it too, and Jake and I see this all the time, when people come into the office and we're developing the financial plan, somebody's told them, hey, you've got more than enough money. So I've got $1 million. Hey, I think I'm going to make 10% on the money, which we just saw in the chart, right? Over a 20, 25 year period of time. Yeah, you better get over that 10% rule. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden you think, hey, I've got more than enough money. I got $1 million, going to make 10% on that money, $100,000 a year, plus my Social Security. Man, I'm going to live the life that nobody lives. It's going to be fantastic. Well, good luck with that 10% rate of return at an appropriate level that you should be taking when it comes to risk, right? You've got to watch what your risk factor is. You've got to manage your cash. Those days of accumulation, they're done. Now you're looking and saying, hey, we got to produce income. We still need appreciation to keep pace with inflation and do what we want to do over, we hope, is a 30-plus year period for retirement. But you really are going to have to look at what are your expectations and what do you have. And a lot of times those expectations, as far as it relates to the rate of return, well, they're probably going to mislead you in thinking that you have enough saved.
Yeah, I mean, we just looked at the last two charts that showed over a 20-year period, the S&P earned 7.5%. Over the 25-year period, it was 7.7.
Yeah.
If you think that you're earning 10%, I mean, you've got to invest in really risky stuff. And that, even for someone who's younger, we're talking emerging markets, we're talking small cap growth stocks. I mean, this is some really risky stuff where you're adding a lot of risk to your portfolio. And now you're saying that you want to do that as a retiree.
Yeah. I mean, again, when we look at this, get your hands around and understand what secrets of returns means and what its impact could be. Take the emotion as much as you can out of what's going on in your decision making and try to put together, whether it's with us or whether you're working with another advisor, an all-weather approach. Right? An all-weather approach, and make sure that your expectations are realistic. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is if you do proper planning. It isn't until you get your hands around all these different things, all these very common retirement mistakes, understand what they are, ask the questions about it, try to avoid them as much as possible. Once you start doing that financial plan and you've kind of looked at all these things and what the impact could be, it's only then that you're really bringing life and finances together.
Thanks so much for watching, for listening, and for learning about retirement planning mistakes and how to avoid them with us today. For questions about our financial services or finances in general, please check out our website. That's reinveltdavid.com. Send us an email, give us a call, and of course, please like and subscribe to our podcast and stay tuned for our next episode.
This podcast is for entertainment and educational purposes only and is not intended as personal financial advice. Before making any financial decision, please do your own research and consult a financial advisor as needed.